Good Wednesday morning. Is it Wednesday? What day is it? Thursday morning. Jesus Christ, I'm losing track of days. How is everybody this morning? That good. Okay. All right. I haven't heard that song in a while. And there's some days where I just want to let that song keep going. I know we got to get started with our song get going. We got to get started with the call. But who's got something to share on the positive side? Who's got some good juju to share? What do we got? Jeff, did you have something?
Well, this is Linda, and I have some really fabulous non-real estate related news. My son just finished his first year of law school at WashU, and he worked really hard to get stellar grades on his LSATs, and only applied to the top 10 law schools in the country. And he worked his butt off this year to get as good of grades as he possibly could. And he was invited out to New York then to interview with some firms for internships for next year in between his second and third year of law school. And I am pleased to report that he got an invitation to work for the top law firm in the country. And the expectation, of course, is that he's going to, dazzle them next summer. And they, of course, are going to extend an invitation for him to come work with them after he completes his third year of law school. And they are going to be paying the child at the same rate that they will pay him for a beginner salary to work at this law firm, of course, on a prorated scale. So they'll pay him for 3 months of a starting salary of $240,000.
Pretty nice.
Yeah, for a 27-year-old kid, I'm going to say that's a win.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a great share. It's actually going to tie into some of my message today. So great share.
And the one thing, and I'm sorry, I just want to say that the reason that I'm so excited for him is because you talk about putting in the reps. He spent a whole year doing nothing but going to work, coming home, and studying for the LSAT and taking practice exam. And then he signed up for that. You only can take the LSAT 4 times. And he was going for like minuscule incremental increases on this thing, because if the higher you get on this thing, the greater the chances are that the law school is going to cover, half or 3/4 of the tuition. And that's what he was going for. And when I tell you that he worked his butt off, I mean it. And in between the third and the fourth test, he's like, Mom, I don't know if I should bother taking this fourth one. And I said, you know what, sweetheart, go for the fourth one, because if you don't, you will always ask yourself, what if I had just taken it the last time? But if you take it that fourth time, then you will never have that question in your mind. And when he took it for the fourth time, it sent him into the something like the top 97th percentile of scoring for that exam. And it made all the difference between him getting really significant scholarships at the school and not. So it's just like, I wish I could just show, it was like putting in the reps and just working so hard. That's why I'm so proud of him. Okay, I'm done. All done. Sorry.
Hey, our mama bear moment. I think you got everybody smiling, and that's that's the purpose of starting off the call this way. Right? Let's get the day going with some positivity. If you're not doing it here, hopefully you're doing it somewhere else with some gratitude. It's tough to be in a bad mood after, even if it's somebody else's story. It's not your story. It's not your win. You've got me in a good mood, that's for sure. So I love it.
I just got a little something, Jeff and Linda. You guys should be really proud of yourselves too for instilling that type of value and work ethic into your kids. So we're proud of
Well,
you guys for doing
oh,
a fantastic job.
oh, thank you so much for your words of encouragement. That means so much to me. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, so not a TV goer over here, but I do occasionally get sucked into something that my wife is watching. And right now she is binging on Suits. And I have to say, I am thoroughly enjoying. Do we have any Suits fans on the call? All right, we got a bunch. Yeah, I don't know who's caught up and who's not, so we're not going to do any spoilers. But man, it's pretty good. And your son's doing it the right way, not the what is it, Mike Ross way.
I adore Suits. It's such a fun ride, isn't
Yeah, it
it?
was a great show.
We just love the hell out of watching it. Yeah. But yeah, he didn't slip in the back door for sure.
Good. All right, well, it ties a little bit into the messaging that I have today, and it's not personal development today. Today, I'm talking some real estate specific stuff. So I don't know how much you guys are aware of the Consumer Federation of America and kind of what they've been doing to put their thumbprint on everything that's been going in our industry of late. But they have been reviewing contracts and, giving their feedback on things. They tore apart some association buyer agreements after they were revised. And then they've kind of applauded a couple of other buyer agreements or been giving the okay to them. So it's been interesting to see how these guys have been reacting to everything that's going on. But what they did yesterday really has got me fired up. They came out and made some statements in an interview that said that they believe that buyers should be doing the following things when talking to an agent, and one of those things is that they should be never paying more than 2% for a buyer's agent. And it just seemed to me to be extremely hypocritical when you're talking about price fixing, that we have colluded to fix the prices, and now you're going to come out and say that this is what you believe a consumer should pay. You've never done the job. And if you're on this call, you know how hard this job is, right? And that's why I played that song this morning, because this job is a lot of work. It will chew most people up and spit them out. So, if you're on this call and you've made it this far, you've got some tough skin, you've got some smarts about you, you've got the work ethic that it takes in this industry. And I don't think anybody should be setting our fees, right? That is up to us to negotiate with a client on what we're worth. But I wanted to bring it up today because, I don't know how much press this thing is going to get, and I don't know how many places are going to pick it up, or I just want you guys to be prepared. If you hear from a consumer, well, I was reading this and they said I shouldn't be paying more than 2%. There's just so many different factors that go in to a buyer's agent and what they do. 2% in a $300,000 price point is a lot different than in a $1 million price point, right? So to just throw a number randomly out there just makes absolutely no sense to me. And I want you guys to be prepared in case this stuff starts to come up. One of the things that they threw out there, and I want you to be prepared for, is that a buyer should also not agree to a percentage. That they should figure out what up to 2% of their price would be. So let's say it's $300,000, that they should say, hey, I'm willing to pay $6,000. And the thought process here is that agents are not incentivized when it's a percentage to get the price lower. So, right. So I want you guys to understand that that is what you could hear from a consumer. Right. And the math does make sense for what they're saying here. Right. If we charge 2%, we get paid more if they buy it for $310 than if they buy it for $300,000. So it's an accurate statement. And I want you guys to be prepared, because we're so used to having percentages that if a buyer is coming to and asking for a flat fee, this may be why. Maybe they read something like this, and I'm not saying a flat fee is the wrong way to go. It just needs to be a fair flat fee for what you are about to do. The other thing that they came out and said is that you shouldn't be signing any kind of a contract that you are agreeing to a payment until you get to know an agent. Okay, so if this thing gets some legs, what does that mean? That means that maybe those showing or touring forms might come into play a little bit more, right? And maybe you are going to have to date a little bit in order to get a buyer's contract signed. So maybe you've got to use these agreements that are just basically touring docs. So personally, I think we should be trying to get a compensation doc, a regular buyer's agreement right up front, and that we shouldn't be going to touring agreements. But I can understand, hey, sign this, pay me this. I don't even know you, but I'm, 3% right off the rip. I can see it getting a little dicey. So again, having this conversation today so that you guys are prepared for this stuff. They talked a lot in the interview about vetting the agent. A couple of the things that they brought up, is the agent a broker or just an agent, right? I've never thought this meant anything in the past. Unless you wanted to open up a brokerage, I didn't think there was any need to get a broker's license. Potentially in the future, maybe there's something there, right? So no, just be aware of that. Maybe credentials start to mean something more. All right. Has the agent sold many properties recently? I think that you're going to start getting vetted more. If you are an agent that's got a bunch of sales under your belt and you haven't done your due diligence to get reviews posted somewhere, I know we've had a lot of issues with Zillow over the years, and they pulled down reviews, and we've used some third parties and Rate My Agent to do reviews. But the reality is Zillow is where the consumers are, right? So I would suggest that you really get your reviews up to snuff. You work with your clients, submit to them, hey, here's a sample, right? Based on our, I know this takes a lot of time. I put together something. You feel free to write your own, but I could really use this, and this is a good way to touch base with your past clients, right? Hey, this is what's going on. I need your help. Like, it's about to get real. And, we had a really good transaction, and I could really use that review now. I think, take a strong look at what does your profile look like online. I think if I wrote down anything else. Not agreeing to dual agency was in there. I do think this is going to get, if not just become law in most states, that you can't do it, but it is, it's going to get questioned a lot. So be very, very, very careful with dual agency. I personally believe that that's the next lawsuit that attorneys are waiting to get their teeth into. What else? Those were most of the things. So, and it's just funny because, as you're reading through this and you look at the attorneys that create this lawsuit and the fees that they charge, nobody's putting any kind of limits on what they're charging, right? The darn people that created this whole thing are getting outrageous fees to do this. So, and some consumer advocacy group is going to come out and tell us what we're worth is just, it's got me infuriated today. And we just need to be prepared. Know your worth, work hard, get the reps in. You're gonna need past sales moving forward. I think it's going to be tougher and tougher to break in as a new agent. You've got to get sales under your belt, and you've got to get those reviews looking good. Anybody have any questions on this stuff? Margareta.
I'm just shocked that this is, like, what about the states like Connecticut? They've had this in place, and people sign those contracts right away. And I feel like, in Connecticut, the Connecticut agents do better business ultimately than in Mass because, you chase the rabbit and the rabbit runs away, where in Connecticut it was very specific. So I don't understand how they still like having issues with this and just do what Connecticut did. There's other states that have the same law.
Yeah, there's plenty of states that have always had buyer's agreement, first personal showing. It's definitely been around for a while. I don't believe it's being practiced in those states because it hasn't been enforced. And I believe, I think the enforcement's about to happen. I think KB talked about it in her sessions yesterday. The fines are going to be a coming if you guys don't have your ducks in a row on your paperwork. So you cannot be showing people property after the 17th without agreements in place. You know, because the minute you get questioned on one, then they're like, show me all of them. Show me all the clients that you're working with and show me the buyer's agreements. So just let's get our documentation right. The other side of it is, I do think this stops us from chasing the rabbits around, right? Let's have the conversations. We're fine. We'll show you the first house, get to know you, and then I'm going to show you why you should use me. You know, just think of it as an initial consultation, right? There's no charge for the initial consultation, but if you want to put me to work, it's going to cost you, right? And if you're newer, right, do you have the ability to charge more than the guy that's been doing this for 15 or 20 years? Right? They say when you pay the plumber $500 because he tapped on the pipe, you paid him $500 because he knew where to tap. You didn't pay him $500 for the 5 minutes that it took him to tap it. Right? So maybe when you're getting into this, you are going to have to charge a little bit less until you can prove your worth a little bit more. The reality is a 15-year veteran who's been doing this a long time is most likely a better agent. They just are. There's so much to learn, right? It's why we do this call. I'm trying to get as much knowledge into your guys' heads as possible, because just doing your 10 deals a year, it's going to take you a decade to get to the 100 deals that I think it takes to get a real grasp on what's going on. So we've got to get educated as fast as we can. We've got to be knowledgeable about the different stuff that's going on. Pat.
When you mentioned touring forms, I'm a little confused. Do we have to have a buyer agency agreement in place to be able to show these people houses, or can we use a touring form and that would count? That
counts.
Okay. Yeah. That's my first question. And my second question is, it's more of a statement, but when I talk to agents that have been in the industry a while, they say, you know, the percentage we're being paid is kind of on a buy side is kind of dependent on the market, right? So in a seller's market, maybe it's 2%, but in a buyer's market, you know, the sellers are offering sometimes more money because they don't have any buyers. So they'll say, hey, listen, we'll pay you 3% if you bring us a buyer. So to your point earlier, when you said like some advocacy group is just telling us what we should be paid, you know, these people don't know that that's the case, right? So you just have to be able to explain that to a client. Like, hey, listen, you know, yeah, we're in a seller's market right now. Everything's kind of selling. So, you know, typically I'm getting paid 2%. But if the market switches to a buyer's market, then, you know, maybe my fee goes up because it's a lot harder to get a buyer into a house for a seller.
Yeah. It could also go the other way, Pat, which is, you know, were you worth 2.5 or 3% when you showed a house and they got the first one accepted, right? Or do you get paid more when things are just moving slower and buyers are looking at 30, 40, 50 houses, right? Or when it's a speedy market and you're still showing 30, 40, 50, you're writing 10 offers. Like you guys were doing a ton of work in those times, right? So there's a lot of different factors regardless of buyers or sellers market that are going into, and then there's micro markets. What's going on in New England, different than what's going on in Florida, different on new construction, right? So that's why it's just like, just say 2%. We really got to look at this buyer, right? We know, right? Unfortunately, the lower end buyers sometimes are harder buyer, right? They just are. So there's a lot of factors that have got to go into it, and we just got to be having open and honest conversations with the clients. Jen.
Is anyone going to challenge what they said? Because like you said, it sounds very hypocritical. It sounds like the exact thing that they're telling us not to do. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I'm sure, you know, I don't know if NAR will come out and say something about it, would be my guess. I don't think they got criticized or held the feet to the fire in the actual interview. I think the interview was done by Inman. But yeah, obviously it is very hypocritical statement, you know. So yeah. And look, this might not get that much press, but I want to open the dialogue here so that we have the scripting. We know what we're going to say. You're anticipating what a buyer might say to you and how we're going to come back at it. And also what it's going to take to survive here moving forward. Anybody else on this topic? All right, I've got something else I want to discuss, but we are over the halfway point here, so I just want to make sure. Does anybody have something pressing on a deal that they're looking for some advice on, or just, hey, a really good share from something that happened in the past day or two? Okay. So the other thing that just looking at a message here. Okay. The next thing that I wanted to bring to you guys' attention is rates dropping a little bit, right? So we really haven't seen this too much, and we might start to hear about refi / you guys might want to be calling past clients, right? This is what a real estate resource does. If you know, hey, my clients are at a point where they're over 1% higher on their interest rate than where we're at today, that's a phone call that I would appreciate from my agent that I know most agents are not making. Right? So typically about a 1% drop. So let's say somebody's 7.25 and rates get to 6.25. That's typically where it starts to make some sense to refi. And just to put it in some dollars and cents, so you guys have an idea, a 7% to 6% drop on a $300,000 house is about $200 a month savings. And I want to say you're typically going to be in the, 2 to 4% range to do the refi. And tip, so, that's going to mean it's going to cost you $6,000 to do the refi. Now, I think most lenders are going to have these no-cost refis. So the $6,000 that it costs you to get the appraisal and do the processing, if you had a $300,000 mortgage, your new mortgage is $306,000 at the new rate, right? So now you got to figure out what your break-even point is. If I'm saving $200 a month over the course of 12 months, that means I'm saving $2,400 a year. It costs me $6,000 to do it. It's going to be what, 2.5 years-ish for the break-even point. Right. But, just being aware of these numbers, I know we don't need to know every mortgage product, but this is something that you guys should understand is when does a refi make sense? And when is it time to reach out to my clients to say, hey, have you thought about a refi? Typically anything more than 1%, you should talk to my guy, give them your lender. The lenders can do that stuff. Our preferred can do these refis, and you might start to see this. So does anybody have any questions on the refi? And obviously the numbers are even bigger in the higher price points. That $200 a month on a 300,000 is going to be $400 a month on a 600, $600 a month on a 900. Right? This is a lot of money a month. And my guess is, you're probably talking about that same break-even point somewhere in the 2 to 3 year range. Obviously, if it's more than a 1% drop, then we could be talking a lot sooner. Is this making sense? Need to go over it again for anybody? Okay. All right, we got a few minutes left. Somebody's got to have something out there. Maybe it wasn't pressing, but who's got to share for us? We had something come in on just kind of my notes line to chat about, which is the difference between a delayed listing form and a deferral of showings form. This is going to depend on the MLSs, but I thought I would just throw it out there, right? Deferral of showings is I'm coming to market. I've got a listing contract signed for Thursday. I'm coming to market on Thursday, but I'm not showing that property until the open house on Sunday. Every MLS is a little bit different on, when you put the property into the MLS, how long you have before you've got to make showings available. So you got to be careful. And I think like in Connecticut, I don't even know if they allow you to do the deferral. I think showings have to be available within either 24 or 48 hours. So you might not even be able to do it. Can anybody comment from Connecticut? I think it's 24 or 48 hours. But in Mass, you can do I think the deferral up to 7 days. So that's deferral. Delayed listing is I've got a listing agreement signed. I go out and meet with somebody, but they don't want to bring this to market for 30 days. But I don't want to leave that listing appointment, right? They don't want to list for 30 days. I don't want to leave that listing appointment and not have a listing agreement signed, right? While they are getting their property ready for sale over the next 30 days, let's say you gave them a punch list of things to do. They've got some painting, they've got some staging, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what happens during that period is they start to tell everybody, hey, we're selling our house. Oh, you're selling your house? You should use Aunt Susie. You should use our neighbor. You should use, if you don't have that listing agreement signed, all of a sudden their antenna is up on listing their house and they are telling people. And all of a sudden you're going to get some bad news. Hey, Steve, I appreciate you coming out. Unfortunately, we decided to list it with somebody else. Appreciate all the advice that you gave us for free, but we're going to be listing with somebody else, right? So we've got to if we're going to start to give advice and help them with stage and painting and repair and all that stuff, right? We're giving them that detailed list of things to do. We got to have an agreement that we're working together. And that's when you're going to use that delayed listing form. Anybody have any questions on the difference between those two? Anybody think of anything that's come up on those two forms? Hey, don't forget about this when you use them. Somebody say something so I know my mic is working.
Hey, Steve, I have a question. From the time they
Yes.
sign the listing agreement, if you don't have a delayed form, how many hours do you have to get it into MLS?
I think MLS PIN is 24 hours. I'm almost positive it's 24. Maybe it's 48, but it's got to be pretty quick. But every MLS is going to be different. So I don't know if anybody on the call knows for sure what MLS PIN is. I'm almost positive it's 24 hours.
Was the question, how soon does it have to be turned in?
Yeah, from the time that you get that listing agreement signed.
24 for MLS.
PIN.
Yes.
Yeah.
It says it right on the forms too in every single state. It says this must be turned into the MLS within 24 or 48 is the time on all of them.
Pretty much all states.
Yeah, but has it on the forms.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jen.
So that's to turn in the delayed listing form, but what about if you have just the listing form, not the delayed, and they signed it like August 1st? How many days or how many hours would you have to put it into to list it before you would need a delayed form?
Oh, they're in the car.
The docket, same thing with the listing form. It's either 24 or 48. It says it right. I'll get you for sure. It's 24 or 48 from the time that it's signed. It has to be into the MLS. I think the listing form itself is 48.
So in theory, probably a lot of times when we're, I'm just trying to think through, because if you're signing today, but there's fields that say the start date and the end date, even though we're signing today, right? I haven't looked at that form in a bit. Today is the list. I'm signing today, but the listing goes live on. They have a start date and then it expires in whatever 6 months. Correct?
That's right.
Yeah. So then I think the problem becomes if that start date is whatever 2 weeks out. In theory, you should be getting that delayed listing form. Because I think the coverage is pretty quick, like what Lauren is saying. So just make sure you guys are covered, because I promise you, if it's 30 days away and you don't get that listing contract signed, they're going to talk to somebody else.
Just confirmed. The actual listing form and the delayed for MLS PIN are both 24 hours from the time they're signed.
Good. Any other questions around those forms? The last thing I'll say, if you do deferral of showings, you have to do deferral of showings. I've seen an agent get burned on this where they did deferral of showings. Somebody called up, they wanted to show the property. They said, nope, no showings until Sunday. Buyer got frustrated, called another agent. That agent calls the listing agent with a sob story. They're out of the country for the next 2 weeks. They can't make it on Sunday. Can you please just get them in? You know, we understand we got to wait. They let them in. And now we got a problem. Right? So if you're going to do deferral, you've got to do deferral. Okay. Good stuff today. You know, I appreciate you guys jumping on. This stuff's really, really important. I know how hard you guys are all working. You know, it's one of the most difficult real estate markets that I've ever seen because the transaction overall volume is low, right? Or around the low 4 million houses in the United States that are changing hands. Real estate agents make money when a lot of properties are changing hands. You know, typically you're up in the 5 million. So we are 20% short on the amount of transactions that are happening. Right? So it is a tough time. There is no doubt. But if you're making it now, you're only going to do better in the future when it goes to 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.5 transactions. And 30% of agents leave the market because they can't hack it. Right? So just because you're struggling right now, if you are, right, you're still in the game. And in my mind, it only gets better from here. We're going to weed out a lot of riffraff in the next 6 to 9 months. People that aren't taking this serious. So have confidence in yourself. If you're attending this call, I'm assuming you're trying to take this career serious, and you're going to be fine. So appreciate you guys. We'll do it one more time tomorrow morning. Have a great Thursday.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.